Provided that this firm is profitable and is successful, that is both good for you and the company. And that's what you want. You want your firm that you're with to be a profitable firm so they can pay you out.
Exactly. And I think that that's also where people are like, hey, we want the rules to get easier and easier. And I think that the easier the rules get, the less likely you are going to be to get paid out, because the firm's not going to be profitable. You want the firm to be making money off of your fees, just purely because when you're the winner, you need to be paid out, right? That's just how it works. What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Fair Value Podcast. Today, I'm joined by somebody who has really, I'd say, pioneered a path through the prop firm industry in a way that really, introduced a whole bunch of people to the prop firm industry, myself included. I remember watching his channel when he first started out on YouTube. And now, I mean, literally one of the founding members of the Funded Trader, a CEO at Smart Prop Trader. We've got, many other consulting things that he does behind the scenes of the prop firm industry. And we've got Blake Olsen here. Welcome, bro.
Thank you. It's so happy to be here and I'm thankful for being on.
Yeah, welcome, man. It's crazy to think that like a lot of people got introduced to the prop firm industry through watching your YouTube channel. I think myself included. I mean, just the prop firm reviews and those kinds of things. And obviously now the prop firm industry is a little bit of like a more controversial space, so to say, in recent times. I don't think we can ignore it. What's your take on what's happening in the prop firm industry now and kind of like the fear and uncertainty?
Yeah, there's definitely quite a lot of that going on right now. There's quite a lot of uncertainty from both the traders as well as even the prop firm owners, just not knowing what's going on right now in regards to regulation. As we've seen some regulation actions already taken place by mainly two different companies. Thus so far by both the Canadian government as well as the U.S. government. We are here to see if there will be even further actions. We also saw that the main payout provider deal recently went under. So there's quite a lot of things going on right now where even like the deal situation where sometimes some prop firms are still being allowed to use it and other ones aren't. And other things, there's certain other aspects that are being looked into right now in the government as well. So we're here to be along for the ride and really see what is going on. Now, there is some other information out there. I've been seeing a lot of wrong information as well, mainly about where the company is physically located. And I think this is one of the best points to make across right now, is that this is the thing that most people end up getting wrong, is that a firm being located in whatever region doesn't matter, provided that they are still allowing traders from US, Canada, wherever these regulators are from. If they are allowing customers from those regions, they are going to be regulated by those same regions. So even if a firm is located, just for example, in Japan and is allowing US customers, the US regulators will come after Japan if they are doing malicious things towards the U.S. customers. Right. Not trying to single out Japan, by the way. I love Japan as well. Just wanted to make that as an example.
People ask me, what is my favorite prop firm to use? And the answer is simple. It's Blue Guardian. Blue Guardian has the best prop firm conditions of any prop firm I've used to trade with. And they allow you to take an unlimited amount of time to pass their evaluation. Not only this, but they give you the Guardian Protector, which is a tool that stops you from hitting your max daily loss. You can also set it further down to stop you from over trading for that day. It simply cuts off your MT4 account and you can't continue to trade if you hit more than that loss. If you want to use the prop firm that I use, click the link down below and use the code GARTRADES to get 10% off your purchase. Let's continue with the video. I think it's interesting because a lot of people are calling for regulations and all of these kinds of things. And other people, like potentially myself included, were like, oh, please, please no regulations, because as soon as the regulations come in, yes, they protect you and all of those things. But I mean, I can do my own due diligence. I know when people have been ripped off by a prop firm. And now with regulations, of course, comes higher fees. There comes potentially lower leverage. There comes more strict rules. There comes, all of the things that we're used to. For example, like when the normal Forex broker industry started getting regulated, you weren't allowed as much leverage, all of those kinds of things. And there was a lot more red tape that you had to go through. What do you think is the future of prop firms? How do you think it's going to be similar to that of the Forex broker space?
I definitely think that there's a high possibility of that happening. Most of this that you're talking about happened under the Dodd-Frank Act of 2010. And under that act, we saw a lot of issues come about from being a trader in the US mainly. And the reason for that is that traders in general tend to not like the FIFO, first in, first out rules. They tend to not like the maximum leverage of either 1 to 20, 1 to 50, whatever, depending on the commodity, of course. And all these rules and regulations, they're there to protect the traders, and I definitely understand that. But some of them are just absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion, especially in the fringe cases, especially in a lot of other cases. And it's a lot of this hand-holding. And now I think, in my opinion, people do need to take responsibility for their own actions and be more like Ethan, who can do his own due diligence and really look and see if there is a problem. Then you need to just avoid that one. And there's so many, it's a free market. There's so many out there to choose from. Now, that being said, there are some bad actors that are really good at covering their tracks, which is the rarer case where regulation is actually very, very good and very important. I think that there should be essentially a protection body, a company or, a government organization there to protect traders if there was malintent. However, you shouldn't necessarily have all these restrictions on trading and things like this. I think a very smart move from the government would be to contact some key players of the industry, ones who are there that are very professional. A lot of people in this industry are professional, but there's also a lot of people who are not as well. If they contact the professional ones who actually want this industry to succeed, that are also here for the traders' benefit as well, then a collaboration between the government and these key players would ultimately result in the best outcome for both the traders, the prop firms, and the government as a whole.
Right, and do you agree that My Forex Funds was the first firm to get hit by this, just purely because of the sheer numbers that they were turning over, right?
So they were actually the second firm to get hit by the CFTC. Now, they were hit much harder in an actual asset freezing case. However, True Forex Funds was actually the first one to be contacted by the CFTC from the US. Even though they're a Hungarian firm, which just goes back to my point earlier, you're not safe as long as you're, no matter where you're located. If you're allowing U.S. customers to come to your firm, you do have to obey the U.S. laws in place. Otherwise, the CFTC or a similar organization will come after you. And what happened with True Forex Funds is they simply got put on what's called the red list, which is essentially like a very formal and public warning. Now, that's what happened with them. And with the My Forex situations, they actually got shut down in a way. Now, for now at least, it is a temporary shutdown. It was a temporary freeze of assets of the ownership of that company. And we are still yet to see what the overall outcome will be. There is files out there that explain what was potentially maybe said by the owners and management of that company, some of which I definitely don't agree with. But it is, for now at least, hearsay. It has not been proven in court either way, whether it did say these things, didn't say these things. And if they did say these things, I think that they should be essentially ashamed for saying those things. But if they didn't, I don't want to be the one pointing the finger this whole time. And I want to wait and see what the court ultimately comes out with. Is what did they say? What did they have on their website? What was inaccurate? What was accurate? And I want to let the courts determine the legitimacy or non-legitimacy of the firm before we jump to conclusions like many others have already done.
Right. I think it's very interesting that when these types of events happen, right, it affects the psychology of certain traders, particularly the weaker ones, in a certain way, because, oh wow, now all of a sudden I am feeling this kind of I am now valid in my excuses for why I'm failing. Oh, it's because the entire prop firm industry is against me. It's because these people are rigging it against me. So now, because one company allegedly did this, who knows how many times they may have done it, if at all, right? Now suddenly the entire prop firm industry is a scam, and that's the reason why these individuals feel like they weren't successful. Why do you think they have this kind of mentality? And do you think that this is the do you think that this is the mentality of all traders that are failing in this industry now, or do you think that it's just a select few that's really, really loud? And do you think that that's, sowed a lot of doubt in people? And do you think that's going to be detrimental to the industry?
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of this in this industry over the last 3.5 years, is that traders will always like to point the finger at any excuse they can have if they are having a bad run or a bad case. And it's very, very rare that the thing they're pointing to is actually a legitimate issue. It's much more likely that there is actually an issue on their own side of things. That's not always the case. There definitely are times where the broker has a problem, or that there was some other case that was not the trader's fault. I've actually been a victim of that actually multiple times. And when this happened, I was trading with FTMO, and FTMO actually did a really good job about 3 years ago of coming clean about it, and they essentially fixed the issue. And that's an example of a good prop firm. That's a firm that really takes care and actually cares about the traders. And sure, there's some other negative stuff that they've done as well. I'm not saying they're a perfect company, but in that instance, you can see them owning up to a mistake like that when that does rarely happen. Now, in this case, if a firm is actually manipulating conditions, especially on an individual trader basis, this is not what we want to see, because this is a situation where it's so anti-trader that is going to make it actually really hard for the trader to be successful. And very few firms would actually end up owning up to this sort of manipulation. And it's something where we really have to take a look at this and say, what should we do about it? And again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about how the regulators should work with some key players in the industry to help determine together as a community what is best for the industry at large and the traders, more importantly.
See, that's the thing. That's the tricky thing, because running a prop firm essentially allows you the discretion to do these kinds of things to some degree. I mean, what it's going to be their word versus yours. They're not going to have much proof other than potentially, screenshots, screen recordings, those kinds of things. But that, at the end of the day, is just like, you were probably trading during a highly volatile time, whatever, yada yada. And at the end of the day, a small voice that has less influence isn't really going to get through to people. And that's also something that I often come across. And it's interesting because, I mean, people like myself, I'm not saying I'm like the biggest influencer in the world, but at least we have some kind of influence. If we are wrongly treated, usually those things are fixed up real quick. But when it comes to people that don't have an influence, they're the ones who's really going to be thrown under the bus with these kinds of things, and they're just going to probably be ignored unless somehow they're able to make a big deal about it on social media and it gains traction. But I think that do you think that there is a clear solution to this problem of potential manipulation by prop firms, other than having a board that checks on them? I guess it's kind of like the restaurant industry, where you've got the health inspector, and the health inspector comes around to check that everything's clean and everything is legit. And that's the thing. It is. What if you get food poisoning at a restaurant? You can't prove that you got food poisoning at that restaurant. You know what I mean? The only thing that they can get nailed for is by the food inspector. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that this is a very complex issue, and there's not one clear example of a clear solution for this. However, there are some other solutions out there that are far better than what we have right now. One of the ways that I think is best to solve this issue is for there to be a better system for determining trust among prop firms. This is something that would need to be fair for both the trader and the prop firm owner themselves, so that traders can't go on there and lie or gang up on prop firms just because they had a bad experience or don't like the founder or whatever reason like that. If they had a real issue, however, then that should be shown publicly so that it can, at the minimum, warn others, if not be able to lead to some sort of reparations. And this is something that I've actually been working on for a while with some other key players of the field. And this is something where it would be really ideal if we could make everything just more transparent. And now I'm not quite ready to announce this entire thing just yet, but just know that it is being worked on. And this is something where I take it very seriously as well, where sometimes the case is that a trader just doesn't know when you enter a sell position, you don't enter at the shown MT4 bid price, MT5 bid price. A lot of people think that you do, and they're like, oh, they call slippage. And what a lot of people don't know is you can actually turn on your ask line, and if you turn on the ask line, you can actually see where your sell entry should actually enter. But even like this simple issue is actually very, very common, and it actually takes up most of the allegations of scamming among prop firms. And there's just so much boy who cried wolf because of that going on, of there's a misunderstanding of how normal trading works, essentially, when traders don't understand bid versus ask, selling versus buying, shorting type of situation. But there are other situations as well where there are legitimate issues. And when you have all these boy who cried wolf moments, it really takes away from the legitimate issues out there. And those do need to be addressed, and it does need to be shown publicly.
I think, though, that the way in which this happened potentially wasn't ideal. Like I said, I think the shocking nature of it, and particularly because it happened to my Forex funds first, because they were just like the gold standard, really. They were really like they were the leader in the industry, basically. It's really like, it's like if you're looking at sporting brands, like imagine if Nike came out and they were selling you like Chinese shoes. You know what I mean? It would be like, how can we trust any of these sporting brands in the industry? Literally the biggest one is a fraud. So I think the way it happened was unfortunate, but I believe that there is a way forward, and I think that there's a lot of people that are just literally ill-informed, and I think they need to get informed about the way things work and do their own due diligence. I also think that on the subject of trust in the industry, things like Trustpilot, if I'm not mistaken, you can potentially manipulate Trustpilot to some degree, and I think some firms have done that. So that's one thing. I mean, that's supposed to be a tool that you can use to gauge objectively whether a company is trustworthy or not. And I think some people have, exploited it in some way. I don't exactly know how, but I believe there is a way to do it. So it would be great if there was a tool that we could use to gauge, the legitimacy of these firms and whether they are playing by the rules. But I think probably the best way to do it would be to, talk to traders, talk to people that have used the platforms before. And I think that that's why, for example, in my case, I'm not scared and I don't have worries because I've spoken to so many people that use the platforms. I've used the platforms myself, and I'm really not that scared. What would you suggest to people out there that are worried and have these trust issues? What would you suggest to them are good ways to figure out which prop firms are trustworthy and which prop firms aren't going to potentially have these kinds of malicious practices going on?
Yeah, so touching first on the Trustpilot point that you brought up, but also get to that as well, is that Trustpilot is extremely untrustworthy in my experience. I have seen multiple prop firms pre-launch have trading reviews saying what a great, amazing service it was about their payouts getting filled, all these things. They haven't even launched yet, and they had like 50 reviews, 100 reviews already on there. Of course, nearly all 5 stars. They might even throw in an intentional, a couple bad ones just to make it look more real. And then if you look at the names, you'll see that it does not fit the demographics of the overall prop firm scene at all in terms of age and gender and things like that. And you can see that it's just so obvious sometimes if you look into it with a fine enough microscope. However, eventually what happens is that those 100 reviews, they get put to the back and they get kind of hidden essentially. And that firm will have a higher rating, even though it's no longer obvious once they get a couple legitimate reviews where maybe it should be like a 2.5 prop firm, but they're still sitting at a 4.3, for example, because of all the fake reviews they've had in the past. And this is one of the ways that prop firms will manipulate their Trustpilot review scores. We've also seen other prop firms being aggressive Now, I only know of one prop firm that has done this, and I won't say names on which one it was, but I'm with 95+% certainty there was a prop firm out there that actually went and attacked other prop firm reviews to give them a bunch of fake 1-star reviews as well. That's also happened. In a similar fashion, we've also seen some influencers, not Ethan, not myself, go out there and actually encourage their followers to give negative reviews to certain prop firms that, for whatever reason, they just don't like. And these type of situations are all leading
Wow.
to unfair results, either both positive or negative. And it really makes it harder as a prop firm owner to do the right thing and to not cheat the system. Now, I've never cheated the system personally, but I do know of a lot of other prop firms who have, and it's actually relatively prevalent in this industry on that particular platform. We've also seen a lot of other social proofs as well. Just because a prop firm has a lot of followers doesn't mean they earned those, and even if they did earn those, doesn't mean that they should have earned those. Now, that's not a good way either. What the best way, in my experience, is to determine which prop firms are legitimate or not is to listen to trustworthy people who are not new to the industry, people who are not an influencer for the money only, prop firm influencers that maybe are actually you can respect and are tend to be more neutral and only talk about the facts more so and give their opinion only when it's essentially required. So listening to people like Ethan, for example, is a great example of that. If you listen to Ethan, he actually has good advice. I've watched quite a lot of his videos, and it actually makes sense because he dives into the details of that situation rather than some of these other influencers, which are really just saying, mine's the best because I'm getting paid from them. And that's not what you want to listen to. In addition to that, you want to listen to the average trader out there as well. If the average trader has a positive or negative sentiment, that is not actually necessarily enough, especially if it's on a platform such as Twitter. What I've seen a lot on Twitter more recently is there's a lot of this gang mentality being forthput by one prop firm that has a bunch of affiliates or whatever of influencers. And when you see that happening, when they have a ton of them, a lot of the case is that they're essentially paying or bribing these influencers to say positive things about them. When that happens, you get a lot of a biased review, and those influencers are sometimes really good at corralling and confirming with their followers that this firm is legit, even though the only source of legitimacy is that they themselves got paid or they themselves got free accounts from the prop firm. So the very best way to go about this, in my opinion, is to listen to people that you trust, whether that's traders or influencers. But don't listen to the overall herds, essentially. You need to decide for yourself.
I would say putting the emphasis on listening to everyday people more than just influencers, even people like myself. I would say an everyday person has a higher priority over influencers, even like myself. Just purely because they've got nothing to gain by telling you this information, whereas I potentially could. I've got an affiliate link. Of course, I'm going to tell you one thing or another potentially. I mean, you just have to trust that I'm telling you something based on my experience, which I have documented, and I've posted about my payouts, and I've posted about the trades that I've taken and the conditions, and I've shown proof. But I mean, all those things can potentially be manipulated, and there are influencers out there that will do that, right? So I recommend always place your emphasis on listening to people that don't have anything to gain, and people that are just everyday people that are trading and trying to make it, or potentially somebody who's maybe one rung on the ladder up than yourself. That's probably the best way to go, in my opinion. There are legit influencers out there, and if you do have that intuitive way of knowing who's legit or not, okay, you can easily spot them, but some people just don't have that. So I think like the easiest way is just to listen to everyday people that are trading. Go look at the people that have been paid out on the Discords of these prop firms potentially. Message them on Discord and just say like, hey, what was your experience like? Like how quick was your withdrawal? Have you had many withdrawals in the past? Those kinds of things. And I think that's probably the best way to go about it if you are new to this industry and you still feel fear. Okay. Personally, I don't feel any fear. My only real fear is that, something happens to the prop firm industry in general. And that's the scariest thing. It's because, for a lot of traders, myself included, prop firm trading changed our lives. Regular trading with a regular broker just doesn't cut the mustard for me. Like, I just can't. I can't go back to trading, even if it's a 5-figure account. For me, that's still kind of like, I still have to take a lot of risk on this account, and I'm putting, whatever, $5,000, $10,000 at risk. I don't want to do that. Why would I, if I could just risk $500 and have 6 figures to play with? You know what I mean? So for those of us for those of us that have fears about the prop firm industry at the moment, what would you say to them, Blake?
Yeah, and I do want to agree with you on your point about listening to the traders, especially those that have gotten the payouts. However, I do want to emphasize the point behind listening to certain key influencers, not all of them, is that some of these influencers have been in the game a lot longer and they understand how things actually really work, both behind the scenes. And it's not very obvious sometimes of how everything really works, where some influencers, but also some normal traders as well, have a much deeper knowledge of this, and this is how you can determine who really knows what they're talking about. And some of these traders, they may think that they had a bad experience when really they just had a bad trading spell, and it wasn't necessarily even their fault nor the prop firm. It was just conditions at that time, and they may have a negative root because of that, or the opposite. Maybe they have an unusually great run on their account, both for both phases, and they're funded, and then they get funded, but that prop firm is no good. And that's why you do need to listen to people who have the experience and authority in the industry, as in addition to the traders. I think that listening to both parties and weighing that appropriately. And then the key thing here is to look at the values behind the person. So just an example, I'm a Christian and I have extremely strong Christian values. And I put that before anything. I put that before making money. I put that before everything else. That is what I believe in, and that is what I am doing. That is my value system. Now, other people, I'm not saying that's the only good value system out there. In my opinion, that's one of the best, but there is other good value systems too. And you have to weigh that as well when you are determining who to listen to, who is accurate, and who is trustworthy.
Yeah, 100% agree. That being said, one of the big red flags of a Forex guru, fake guru type vibe person, particularly within the South African Forex space as well. But you can spot this from a mile away. And again, it all comes down to that intuition. A lot of these Forex guru type influencers who aren't real traders, but more influencers, for some reason they tend to leverage religion as a way to manipulate their audience. How do you think we can spot this from a mile away? And I think that, in my opinion, the way that you can figure out whether people do this, and I've seen so many people do this, whether it be with the Islamic faith, whether it be Christianity, whether it be whatever it is, they use that as sort of like a. And I'm not saying that that's what you were doing in any way. That's not what I was saying. It just brought me onto the subject because I've seen it, and people are like gratuitous about it. They talk about it, and they're like, they talk about religion all the time, but then you see them like smoking weed on their story or getting completely wasted, and they're in the strip club, etc., etc. And for me, that's where I'm like, okay, you're just purely using religion as a manipulative tool to try and garner more of a support within that community and to garner more trust. So I think that's a real shame. But I mean, if you've got 2 cents to rub together, you'd be able to figure out that that's exactly what they're doing. So yeah, I think that it's also interesting that within the prop firm space, it's come a long way since we started. Right, the prop firm space has come a long way since the beginning. I mean, FTMO, one of the original members, one of the original guys. I mean, I think they were around since like 2008. Am I right? Is that too long? Anyway, that's pretty long. You were saying, we were chatting before this. You were saying that within my Forex funds, you spoke to the founder, right? You were in contact with him pretty often. What's your whole take on what has happened with them? Do you think that it's all just one big marketing thing that went wrong, the wrong words on their website? Do you think that it's that they are in the wrong more so? Obviously, we know about the potential manipulation. What's your take on all of that?
Yeah, I'd love to answer that. I want to answer both things as well and talk a little bit about the religious comments as well. And I want to point out that at least in
Yeah.
Christianity, there's a word that we have to determine who is like essentially a real believer, a real follower of the faith, and who isn't. We say that we can look at people's fruits. That means how do they really act? So if there is someone in the situation that you described, you would look at those fruits and you'd be able to determine whether or not you believe them, that they really are who they say they are. At least that's how the Christian community views that particular subject. Speaking on the other part about the actual my Forex fund situation, this is something where I was in contact from the very beginning since Mertuza with Mertuza. However, we kind of fell out of communication pretty shortly after they really launched. I have never had any role with that company. I've never been paid by them for anything other than payouts and affiliate links and that sort of thing. I've never had a job there or anything like that. I've never worked for them. I've never been on their board. Never been in that kind of stuff. But I have spoken to the founder. And I've spoken to them again more recently because of what has been going on. I wanted to check in, see what's going on, see if I could see from their own perspective, is there anything extra that you want to let everyone know? And so I did reach out to him for that as well. Pretty much just said it's being worked on and it's coming along good, which he said that really early in the stages of this whole court stuff. So we'll see if that continues to be his stance on the whole situation. I hope that is the case, both for the firm itself as well as the traders. Do keep in mind that the traders that were funded with them as well are no longer have their funded accounts. They're no longer being paid out if this does fail. So if this does succeed, potentially, very likely, these traders will continue to be able to trade and earn more money with the firm. And so I think that would be the best situation in this whole thing, is if the company would come back, maybe with some restrictions, maybe with more eyes watching them, maybe with whatever else is necessary. But I do hope that my Forex funds does come back and is strong when they do and still able to facilitate their current funded traders, traders who have already passed first phase, all that sort of stuff, so that the traders who have earned their accounts continue to make money with them and continue to be paid out by those accounts if they earn it.
I think as well, there's also been this whole debacle about Deal, the payment provider, suddenly all shutting down on a lot of different prop firm companies. And I think a lot of them were really stressing themselves to pieces over the last couple of days because of this. And I heard something interesting from somebody, I think it was on Twitter, but they were saying that if there is indeed cause for, the CFTC, et cetera, to potentially prosecute my Forex funds, that people that earn money from that could potentially have to pay it back. Is that something you heard as well?
I haven't heard this standpoint before, so I don't know the legitimacy of it or not. It's really to be determined by the courts at that point. There's anyone who tells you they know that's happening, they are wrong. They do not know what's going to happen. It's still, everything is to be determined, and I don't want to say I know what's going to go on either, because I don't.
In terms of, so if you guys don't know, Blake has his own prop firm. I mean, he's involved with many different elements of the prop firm industry. One of the key members of, firstly the YouTube reviewers that kind of kicked off a lot of people's passion for prop firm trading and that kind of stuff. But Blake, you are one of the founding members of Smart Prop Trader, and a really impressive firm, really, really great. I myself have traded with you guys, and it's a really great experience, really great firm. I've done videos on you guys in the past. What is your standpoint as a prop firm owner? What is your plan of action for this whole debacle? And like I said, you've already kind of alluded to this in the past, but what what steps, if any, are you going to take to make sure that people feel, safe trading with, smart prop trader?
Yeah, so we are, as a company, we are looking to regulators to make sure that everything we're doing is by the book so that we can continue to be a company and also be aligned with the law. So we are by no means trying to avoid the law. We're not planning on moving our jurisdiction or anything like that, because first of all, that wouldn't do anything, but also that would just make more of a reason to look into a firm if they are moving around things like this. And it's really important to know what I was saying earlier about the US based customers is the US based regulators. So that kind of correlation is extremely important to realize. What else Smart Prop Trader is doing is we're making sure that we are in constant communication with our lawyers as well to make sure that they are ensuring that everything we're doing is by the book, making sure that there isn't anything new coming out. And if there is, that we can adhere to that right away. We want to make sure that everything we're doing is going to be protected for the long term, because we want to be able to facilitate traders in the long term. We don't want a similar situation to what happened with my Forex to happen with Smart Prop as well. It's very important to us that we have everything in place and we're very clear on our wording on our website as well for what is exactly going on. We want to be transparent as possible, both for the regulation standpoint, but also because we believe in transparency.
Right. And I think that this is a very good point. I think a lot of the prop firms in the beginning stages, my Forex funds included, and this is probably one of the biggest things on the whole CFTC case, is that they said that, they were directly funding traders and that it's, real funds, etc., and that when they make money, the company makes money, etc. You obviously are an expert when it comes to prop firms and prop firm models. What is, firstly, the recipe for a successful prop firm model? And are most prop firms running in sort of like a B book kind of model to a majority? I believe that to be the case personally, and I don't believe that to be a bad thing necessarily. Everybody finds it such a terrible thing that, traders' fees are potentially being used to pay out the profitable traders. However, myself being on both ends of those arguments, at the end of the day, I've lost accounts, I've paid fees, and I've probably paid other people's payouts. But I'm glad that I went through that, and now I'm on the winning side. What's your take on that whole thing? And I think that a lot of people are only realizing this now, that that's how generally the prop firm industry works. I mean, there is an aspect of A booking to some degree, where, profitable traders are copied to live accounts and those kinds of things. But I believe most of the time, prop firms don't have as much of an emphasis on A booking their clients. What do you believe is, firstly, what's your thoughts behind that, the general model of prop firms in general? Firstly, obviously the one that my Forex funds had, and the way that they portrayed it, etc., and what do you believe to be the most profitable model for prop firms in general? And on top of that, what makes it, ethically okay? Because a lot of people view this as ethically wrong. But again, like I say, nobody's being held at gunpoint to trade with them. I just think that prop firms needed to be more transparent, in my opinion, and that's where I think my Forex funds maybe stood in the mud a little bit. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so when it comes to the A book versus B book dilemma, this is something that the prop firm industry has been talking about for maybe about a year and a half. It's been in the mainstream spotlight. And this is something that a lot of traders, in my opinion, care too much about. And the reason for this is that if a firm is actually out there and they are A-booking every single trader, that is definitionally not a prop firm. The reason why is if you look at what a prop firm literally is it's essentially where you have extra data or anything like this, you have some sort of competitive advantage to trade. And it's a proprietary strategy that you're using. If you are out there on your actual trading strategy that you as the trading entity side of the firm is doing, and you're public about you backing every single trader, that is not proprietary, and therefore you are not a proprietary trading firm. You are maybe just a trading firm or essentially a game out there, depending on exactly what the rest of the models and how you have structured everything else. So that is important to keep in mind as well. But also, from what we've seen, it is not profitable to back every single trader, even those that have made it through phase 1 and phase 2 on a model. If you're backing every single trader, that you will most likely actually be losing money over time. And now that's not to say necessarily that you'll actually make money on the other side if you're B-booking, because essentially why it's so unprofitable to back every single trader is you have to keep in mind that the firm itself also is paying swap and fees and all these other and commissions and all these other aspects that you also pay. Now the firm may get better deals and there may be other things like this, but it is also trying to make money from both sides of this, both from trader fees, which is very important, in addition to actually using the trader data to be profitable. Now, the model that most prop firms use is they actually separate those two into two different entities, two different companies, where company A is essentially the fee collection and payout model, which is what people call the prop firm. And then there's another one who is actually potentially taking some trades or using the data from the first entity to actually be better at trading and be successful at that. And then they usually have same ownership and they work in some capacity together, or maybe not. That's just the most general model of how these firms are doing this. And by doing it that way, it really sets you up for success in the best way possible to really diversify it in those two realms. But basically what I'm trying to get at is that the traders, provided that this firm is profitable and is successful, that is both good for you and the company. And that's what you want. You want your firm that you're with to be a profitable firm.
And I think
so they can pay you out.
Exactly. And I think that that's also where people are like, hey, we want the rules to get easier and easier. And I think that the easier the rules get, the less likely you are going to be to get paid out, because the firm's not going to be profitable. You want the firm to be making money off of your fees, just purely because when you're the winner, you need to be paid out. Right? That's just how it works. So I think that that's also an interesting topic to touch on, is that, the funding model in general has become so competitive, which I believe is great. I think that one company having the monopoly on this whole industry would be a detriment to it, because now with all of these new companies coming through and competing against each other, firstly, the prices of fees have come down and the rules have just simply gotten better. Do you think that there's a pinnacle to this? Do you think that things are going to change more or get even better? Or do you think that we're kind of at, the sweet spot? And I think that if anybody gets easier than this, if the rules get easier than this, then potentially it'll be detrimental to prop firms. What's your take on that?
Yes. Now, as a prop firm owner, and because of my position that I have, I am able to have access to a lot of other information technology that other firms even, and mostly the traders, don't have access to. And I am able to see that there are a lot of firms out there, unfortunately, that are not sustainable. What essentially these firms do is they rely on growth. And soon as the growth stops, they have an issue. So for some firms, even once they flatline, not even have a down month on challenge fee revenue, but even if they just be even from last month to this month, then that is actually a problem for them. And they are running into this whole downward spiral where they are faced for being very unlikely to continue being able to be profitable at all, to be able to pay these traders. And especially these companies that are spending a lot of money on expensive cars and expensive things like this, that their model isn't very well set up. Those ones are the ones that are the most affected by this. And those are the same ones that will have the issues that we will be seeing in the near future. Now, it is really great to have all these new firms here and have more competition in the space. That is better for the trader, especially in the short term. However, you have to make sure that the firm you're trading with is actually going to be sustainable for the long term and isn't one of these firms that is relying on the growth alone. And how you spot one of these firms is essentially the ones that are constantly running these massive discounts all the time. And it's just really unprofessional for all these firms. What I've been seeing more recently is all these firms have been running more and more discounts, getting lower and lower and lower, and that is not good. This is something where it's really relying on more and more traders coming in. That's how you know that they are one of these firms that are very likely to at least be where they need those discounted traders to keep coming in. Those are obviously less profitable traders for the firm because you get less money from the challenge to revenue. And if they're running discounts all the time, why don't they just lower their prices? And this is something that I have wondered for a very long time, and I have not yet found the answers. There has been a lot of cases where I've seen that for whatever reason, sometimes traders prefer to pay a higher price if it's a larger discount versus a lower price prop firm to begin with. And I'm not sure why that's the case, but we have definitely been seeing that. And so that's one of the reasons for my firm, Smart Prop Trader, when we do rarely run these discounts, which I think we've ran maybe 4 in total since our inception, roughly, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less than 4, we have almost always quoted the discounted price in the actual price that you see rather than saying this much percentage off. And that's very rare for us to say the percentage. We like to at least show both if we will show the percentage as well, just to be more transparent and better for the trader to make up their mind of whether they want to go with us or one of the other firms out there.
I feel like you were firing shots at a specific firm there, but I won't go deeper into that.
Definitely not firing. There's not a lot of bad actors, unfortunately, in the industry. A lot of good actors too, though.
No, I'm kidding. Do you think that the prop firm model at the moment is going to change a lot? Like in terms of, do you think there's going to be more innovative approaches to this, and not just talking about easier rules or cheaper fees? Do you think that there's going to be many more unique? Because I mean, the whole idea of prop firm trading to begin with was a brilliant idea. I don't know who came up with it and how they discovered that it could be a profitable business, but I'm sure there are other ways to approach it. Do you think that there will be other ways of approaching this that will come to light?
I believe that prop trading started in the 1970s or 80s. And that was really when prop firms were essentially just companies where you would go to this company and you'd say, here's my 3-year plus long track record. That was usually the minimum, was 3 years. And then of you trading your own personal account. And then you would show that to them and they would determine if they wanted to fund you or not. It was that simple. There was no challenge fee. There was no challenges. That's how it originally came about. I'm not sure exactly who was the first online prop firm to determine whether there would be like a challenge fee and a challenge itself. Rather than just posting your past history. But we've really seen the rise of this within the last 4 years or so is when it's really taken off. And I think that going forward, we're definitely going to see more innovation. Anyone who says we're never going to see more innovation is always proven wrong in nearly everything. So I don't know specifically exactly what's going to happen in the near future, but I do know that there probably will be even more and further innovation in this industry along with everything else as well. That's just the way the world works. That's how we've seen it forever. So far in the industry, everything generally boils down to one of 4 models. Either you have instant funding, you have 1-step, you have 2-step or 3-step. That's generally how it works. There is also a few other more fringe styles out there as well, but those are generally the 4 main ones that we've seen. The last one I mentioned, the 3-step, has been pretty rare and only very recently being picked up really at all. But I definitely have seen that. I've seen Lark has recently come up with that one. I think a couple other firms have that as well. But it's something that is definitely a cool, new, innovative thing that these firms are coming up with. That's just one example of this whole process. And that's something where we are going to continue to see more innovation, probably more than just adding more steps. I hope to see some other more diverse innovation in this realm.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what comes up. I mean, I often, when I'm in the shower, I'm like literally just like, I'm thinking to myself, what's the next big prop firm model that could potentially come out? How am I going to become a millionaire from this? Anyway, I often think about it, and there's so many different interesting ways you could potentially approach it. And I think there's going to be something really exciting potentially coming out soon that somebody figures out. I know a certain prop firm, they hyped up like this new model that was coming up for ages, and they're like, oh, it's going to change the industry. It's like nothing else we've ever seen. And it's like literally just like less. It's literally like, firstly, there was another prop firm that had the exact same model previously. They're just lesser known. And you probably have an idea of who I'm talking about. And yeah, it was just essentially just a lower target and then a higher target for phase two. So I was just a little disappointed by that. Um, uh, you know what? I want to touch on a little how you ended up getting started in the prop firm industry specifically, Blake, because you had your YouTube channel, you were reviewing prop firms for ages. I mean, you were the leading person in that field. I watched like all of your videos when I first started out, and I mean, this was like 2-3 years ago, to find out what was the new thing that had come out, and how trustworthy they were, and it was really helpful. And I think that potentially from you having all of that knowledge and being in in that space and so ingrained in that industry, you were able to put things together that turned prop firms into the brilliant things that they are today. How did you end up getting started in that space? It must have been pretty daunting.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the complimentive words. I'm very thankful for that. I'm happy to have been the person who has really brought you into the field as well. And I'm definitely not the only one out there, but I do really appreciate the nice words. How I really got started was that I was started off by working for another trading education company as a trading educator. I ended up getting pretty good at trading. I went out to London. I studied with some other traders there. I read a lot of books on trading. I ended up getting pretty decent at it. I started teaching for a education company in Arizona. And while I was still in Arizona, I also eventually started my own company where I was teaching people how to trade. And unfortunately, I was very unsuccessful at first. I was not able to bring in anyone to teach. We had a maximum of 4 people coming to our education platform for the longest time. And then I started getting into YouTube. I started posting videos on YouTube that are no longer on my channel, where I would show people how to trade. And I'd be educating on YouTube for free as well. And that's how I built my initial audience. That's how I got my first 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. After that, I decided to really go hard into the YouTube sphere. And I also had, from one of my employees, he suggested that there's this firm out there that will actually fund you with $100,000 if you just pay them around $600, and you had to prove yourself and they got fund it. And I thought this was the most wild concept. I didn't believe it was real at first. And what I decided to do is look more into it. And I did so much research, and I looked into all these different firms and determined that by far at that time, my FTMO was the largest firm. And so I decided to go with FTMO, and I paid the fee myself, and I documented my journey. And then these videos are still on my YouTube channel today. I'll look a lot younger when you pull those up if you do decide to watch those. But it's where I was, I went through the process, and I put out the videos as I was going through the challenge. In other words, I did the whole challenge. They had the whole 10 minimum days and all that. And I posted the video before I even finished the verification. And then after that, I finished the verification. I made another video about it. And I was like, hey, guys, look at me. I'm passing the challenge. I passed the verification. And then I was on to the funded stage. And again, I made a video where I showed that I was trading very well. And by that point, I had around 10 members in my education company, because people saw that I was actually pretty decent at trading, and they wanted to learn how I was doing this. They saw that I was being proven by, in this case, FTMO, but it could have been an Indian proprietary trading firm, and that I was proving my skills in a way that can't be faked. There's so many ways to fake an account there, but going to FTMO is not one of them. And I ended up then going and getting a very large payout. I got roughly a 30% gain on my account. And that was huge. And that was my very first payout. It was my very first try. And I remember on the day that I launched that video, I kind of rebranded my whole education company, and I ended up getting around 70 or 80 or so clients, people who wanted to learn from me how to trade, all on that first day of releasing that video, because everyone was like, wow, you actually got paid from your skills. You have now the real proof. You passed challenge verification and payout. You can watch my whole journey of my very first payout right on my YouTube channel. And again, I made them before I even finished anything. I was doing it along the way. I was being very vulnerable in that way. I would have shown if I would have failed. Now, fortunately, I didn't fail. I was able to get that large payout, which in the case was 70%. So I got $20-something thousand or so from that, and that was great. And so I showed that, and I saw that that video on my YouTube channel did way better than all my other YouTube videos. So therefore, I decided to essentially quit making YouTube videos on teaching people how to trade while still teaching people how to trade, but just making more videos on funding companies and prop firms. And I did more and more and more. I started interviewing a ton of founders, really learning how the whole industry works from a deep level perspective, from the owners themselves. And I interviewed so many different founders, and I put most of them, not even all of them, but I put most of them up on my YouTube channel. And eventually I got the real hang of it. And eventually Angelo came over to me, and we talked about creating a company together. Now, I had known Angelo previously because he had an education company at the same time that I did, and we were just essentially internet friends. We had never met up in person before that. And we decided to create a company, even without even meeting ever in person. And that's how the Funded Trader was born. That continued to amass a very successful company. The payouts from that company is massive. I think it's over $80 million at this point. That company is absolutely skyrocketing. And then eventually it was time for me to branch off and start my own. So I started doing consulting along with starting my own proprietary trading firm, which is Smart Prop Trader.
Wow, that's insane. Your first payout was 30% on a 100K account. That's absolutely wild. That's insane. I can understand how that video would have just really like absolutely blown up. But I think that that as well, and that's an interesting thing that you mentioned earlier as well. That I think that that's something that prop firms also bring to the space, is that results with a prop firm can't really be faked. I mean, there are ways of faking it if you, for example, work with the prop firm, which I believe maybe some of these fringe prop firms may have done at some point. I mean, who knows what could have happened. But really, especially if you're trading with firms like, FTMO, or even at the time, my Forex funds, there's no real way that you could have faked those results. And I think that verification of results, and it's not just I made this 30% once. I actually passed phase 1, I passed phase 2, and I made this. And consistently showing that you're able to do that really does verify your results. And I think that that's something that the prop firm industry has brought into the industry, like that level of verification. So yeah, I think that's an interesting point as well. When it comes to when it came to starting a prop firm, and when you started with the Funded Trader, do you think that having this knowledge of prop firms and reviewing so many and going deep into the way that they work had a big bearing on how this prop firm ended up turning out and basically becoming one of the most popular prop firms in the world?
That so clearly was the case. I think that was extremely. You point out that very clearly as the reason, probably the largest reason why that company was so successful.
Yeah, I think, but right from the beginning, it was very, very obvious that there were certain things that you had noticed about other prop firms that were lacking, that were immediately put in. Things like the dashboard being so clean, things like the website being so clean and having, clear access to discords, clear access to support. It's not, it's certain things like that. And that's one of the things I really enjoyed about your prop firm reviews, is you were very practical in your criticisms about them. And I think a lot of them actually took a lot of your criticisms on board and changed a lot of stuff and benefited from your reviews in that way, which I think is important. A lot of people just bash on prop firms and they're not actually looking to give back to the industry. And I think that that's a key thing in what you did. And you then took all of those, downfalls that potentially some prop firms maybe didn't fix, and you pumped them into the Funded Trader as well. So yeah, I think that it's interesting that when we have this knowledge of the negatives of the way things run, and so many different negative things that you could have piled up and different things that could be improved upon, putting all of those things into some kind of like Frankenstein of all of the bad things and turning them into good things, I think that recipe just clearly just worked. So yeah, I think that in this industry at the moment, though, there's a lot of like controversy. There's a lot of stuff happening especially on Twitter, where prop firms are bashing prop firms. Prop firms are putting each other down. Do you think that this is going to be highly detrimental, or is it just people that are, messing around? I think that it clearly shows the character of like certain individuals and certain prop firm owners, even the ones that are particularly bashing other prop firms, etc., etc. It's pretty unprofessional.
Yeah, it definitely is, and especially on Twitter, we've even seen a different prop firm owner make up lies about myself, and they ended up posting them everywhere and tried to essentially make me out to be a bad guy, a villain of the industry, which I feel like I'm probably one of, if not the biggest fan of this industry, a much larger fan than that person as an individual. And I don't have any ill will towards that person. I think at least I'm a very forgiving person. I keep trying to reach out to this person to essentially squash the beef, to talk everything out and to try and reason with this person. But unfortunately, people like this are at the head of this industry, and this really shouldn't be the case at all. This person is extremely unprofessional. It's really that person alone is contributing quite a lot to the downfall of the whole industry. They haven't only attacked myself; they've also been attacking other traders. Which, by the way, I am a trader at that firm. Even still, I still have my account with that firm because I was on pretty good footing with that person. But then eventually, they decided to switch and try to essentially do all these negative things towards me, and it's very sad to see. But eventually, at the end of the day, I still have my account, and I do wish the best for both that person and their prop firm, especially because their traders that they have are not at fault. It's really just the very poor level of management. And unfortunately, I don't see a firm like that lasting very long, but I do think that I hope that it does for the sake of the traders, basically.
Yeah, I think whenever you focus on the negativities of things rather than just trying to be a positive influence on the industry itself, it just really shows your character and your attitude towards things. And hopefully they change just purely because we don't want that kind of toxicity within this industry, especially when there's so much, so many eyeballs on it at the moment, particularly because of all the controversy. We don't want to seem like a toxic industry at all. And I think that these kinds of individuals really bring attention to the negativity in the industry overall.
Yeah.
I think overall though.
Yeah, there's no room in this industry for the bullies.
Say again.
The bullies in this industry just do not belong, and we can't have these bullies in this industry. It's just not something that should be there at all. This kind of thing, especially at a high level management position, is just not something. It's inexcusable. It's so unprofessional, and it really is leading to the downfall of the industry. I hope that these internet trolls essentially will clean up their act.
It's interesting because, I mean, we're looking at, companies that, turn over hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars per month. And they've literally got, high level individuals, executives acting like, the school playground. It's kind of crazy. But that also, at least, like I said, is another way to judge which companies you actually want to work with or not. I think that it's a clear way of distinguishing who you want to be involved with or not. But yeah, I think that this industry has a long way to go, potentially with the way that there's just a huge influx of new prop firms as well. This was bound to happen, really. I think it was bound to happen that potentially less mature people would come into this industry and start to really, I wouldn't say negatively affect it, but yeah, it definitely puts a bit of a smudge on the industry to some degree, and hopefully that the good stuff makes up for it in general. But Blake, I think we could talk for ages, but honestly, I'm very, very happy that we had this conversation. I think a lot of the people that watched this would have learned a whole ton. I mean, Blake being one of the key people in essentially making the prop firm industry what it is today. I don't think everybody realizes what a big a big influence you've had on the industry and shaping it the way it is. You're one of the original influences that started all of this stuff and affected a lot of the prop firms that are running today. So thank you very much for coming onto the show and just chatting with me. And I think that the people watching this, particularly, people that are worried about the prop firm space, will have, taken some knowledge away from this and learned quite a bit about how things work, and maybe they feel a bit more at ease and know what to do next when they're looking to trade with a prop firm, and look for the legit ones as well. So thank you very much, brother.
Thank you so much. And last thing I want to say is that there are plenty of legitimate firms out there. I don't want to come across in any way that I think that Smart Prop Traders, the only legitimate one, is far from that. Blue Guardian is another great one as well, which of course, Ethan, you're part of. And then there's so many other legitimate ones out there as well. There is certain things that are best for every single trader. Just make sure that you do your research. Make sure that you look into all the prop firms that you are considering. Look at their exact specifications. Look how the management acts on the internet, and make sure that you make the best decision, whatever is right for you and how you trade. Because ultimately, it all depends on you and what is best for you as the trader. So thank you so much for having me on here, Ethan. I hope that we can do another one of these again. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, look forward to it, man. So to everybody watching, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe and like, and let me know what you thought about it and what you want to see in future videos. So cheers to everybody, and I will see you in the next video.